Hi, I'm Daniel the Healer, and today I'm going to talk to you about making a bone broth. Besides being a healer now, earlier in my life I was a professional chef. I was trained in Switzerland and I had a catering business for a long time. So all the things that you see here are the way professionals do it. As far as bone broth is concerned, earlier, people used to consume the whole animal. Nowadays, with all the meat being pre-packaged in department stores and you just pick it up on the counter and it's pre-packaged in some plastic wrap, you don't get the full nutrition. You don't get the bones anymore. And it is important to get all the nutrition that is in the bones. So we're going to make a bone broth today. I prefer chicken bones. Chicken bones tend to have more chondroitin, more of that gelatinous mass that lubricates your joints and keeps your joints healthy. And it also has collagen, which keeps your skin in good condition. As you can see, I use chicken leg bones. They are organic. So this is what I do. I start with a 10-quart stainless steel stock pot. I throw in 10 pounds of the chicken leg bones and fill it up with water. So here we go. We're going to put in the 10 pounds of chicken bones into the 10-quart pot. As you can see, it doesn't all fit in, mainly because it was frozen and so the pieces are not coming apart. But as soon as we are starting to boil this, the ice will melt, the bones will come apart and it will all drop in. So what you do is you now fill it up with water, leaving enough space for whatever comes in to fall in, and the water doesn't boil over. If there's not enough water, we'll always be able to add it to later on. And then we bring it over to the stove top on the burner. So here it is on the stove top. And we light the flame. And we bring it to a boil. So as soon as it boils and it's all in, I'm going to continue. So it is about 30 minutes later. As you can see, it is coming to a boil. And always when it comes to a boil, the very first time, it kind of forms this gray foam. And it is important that you skim this gray foam off the top of the surface. And then, because right now we have it on high heat, you need to reduce the heat so that it just simmers. And we're going to let this boil for 40 hours. I normally don't like to let it boil overnight, so I basically have it going 4 days, 10 hours each day. I just don't want to leave the gas burner on overnight for safety purposes. As you can see, all the chicken has thawed out of this block and it just shrunk into the pot where now it can boil for this time. So this is good enough, and I will report back to you this evening when I turn off the gas. And then again on the third day, when we will be adding additional flavor in the form of various vegetables and spices to give the stock a good taste. Okay, so it's about 10 hours later since we worked with this broth, with this bone broth. As you can see, I covered it up. And it's just barely simmering. You will notice how these bones have been compressed. We'll have extra space to put in the vegetables that will give it the flavor. The meat is kind of coming off the bones. The upper thigh is separating from the lower thigh. There's just more compression that can happen. So anyway, as I mentioned earlier, I'm going to turn it off now. Cover it. And let it cool down overnight, and then tomorrow I just turn the heat back on, bring it to boil, and then simmer it. So in the next segment also, as we're closing this out, I want to speak to you about where to get 10 pounds of chicken leg bones. So as I mentioned to you earlier, I want to speak to you just a little bit about bone broth in general. Another term that is used is stock. And of course, I chose to make chicken bone broth or chicken stock, but you can also make fish stock, you can also make beef stock, you can make stock with any bones that you find. So where do you find 10 pounds of organic chicken leg bones? Well, I live in Los Angeles, and I go to the food co-op in Santa Monica called Co-Opportunity, and so and I special order them. And of course you can go to your butcher and you can ask them if they cut meat. You can ask them whether they can save you chicken bones, because they will have to make boneless thighs, skinless, boneless. So that is one way that you can find it. However, I think I'd like to talk to you a little bit about the meat industry. First of all, the animal gets raised on a farm, then it is taken to the slaughterhouse where the animal gets killed, cut into large parts. It gets skinned, or if it's a bird, it gets plucked. And from there on, it goes to a meat packing house. You see, not every store, not every food store has a meat department, and they will buy their meats pre-packaged, and they do that from a meat packing house. So if you go to a store that doesn't have a meat department, you can maybe ask them what their packing house is, and you go to the packing house, or you can ask them to go to the packing house and order the bones for you. That's what I do. I go to the Co-Opportunity in Santa Monica, and they get their meat from a place, a packing house in the greater Los Angeles area called Shelton's. And so when I go to them, I'll say, hey, please order me 10 pounds of chicken bones from Shelton's, and 2-3 days later it gets delivered. I pick them up, and that's how I do it. Now you can of course also go to Google meat packing houses, and you can then call them up and say, hey, what stores do you take your stuff with that's in my neighborhood, and then go to that store and order the bones there. You can also go to a farmer's market, or if you go to a supermarket that has a large meats department that does their own meat cutting, then you can get all the chicken bones or whatever bones you choose. You can add that to, you can order it there, you can add it to your stock. I did do beef stock in the past, and a very nice thing to add is hooves. Hooves are full of the chondroitins. They are full of that collagen that you're looking for in a bone. Anyway, so much for where and how you get 10 pounds of bone. Hello. So today's the 4th day. The stock, the bones in the water that we prepared 3 days ago have been boiling for 3 days, basically 10 hours a day, so 30 hours overall. And today, on the 4th day, for another 10 hours of cooking, we're going to add flavor in the form of various vegetables and condiments. So leek, garlic, we kind of just take a whole head of garlic and just cut it in half. Carrots, 2 large carrots is good. You kind of just cut it into pieces. Celery, two pieces is enough as well. Onion, you just quarter them. Throw it all into the stock pot. I also have some leftover when I used parsley. I have some parsley stems that I had kept in the freezer. That's also going to go into the stock. And whole clove and a bay leaf. So let's move the camera onto the pot. I've already added some of, as you can see from earlier, some of the vegetables. So we're just going to throw in the rest. Now we're adding cold stuff to it, so we need to increase the heat some so it can boil again. Also, during the 3 days of simmering, we lost some of the liquid in evaporating from the boiling. And so we're just going to add some water back into it. Yeah, that's about good. Add three whole cloves. And 2 bay leaves, 1, 2. Push everything down into and that will give it the flavor that will make this oh so delicious at the end. Hi, so now that the stock has cooked for over 40 hours, we need to drain and separate the liquid from the solids. And so we're going to bring the pot over to the work area where we will continue. Okay, so now we're going to separate the liquids from the solids. There's so much stuff in there that it's going to pour all over the place. I have in this bowl a colander, and it's kind of a sieve. I'm just going to grab the solids out of here and put it into the colander. Now, you need to know that I'm a professional chef, so I'm used to working with large quantities. And if you feel that this is intimidating for you, that there's way too heavy a pot or whatever, then you just need to modify the recipe so that it suits your needs. Just cut it in half, cut it in a quarter. I just kind of like to do large quantities. I'm comfortable with it. So there's so much stuff in here that I'm gonna let it drain what is in the colander. As you can see, it's like dripping underneath it. So I'm just gonna let it drip, and after a while the dripping will have stopped, and I will dispose of what is in the colander and then pour out the rest. So I will reconnect with you guys in about an hour or so when this has stopped draining. Okay, as you can see, it's not dropping anymore, so that means this batch is dry. There's not much you can do with this, what's left over. If you compost, you could throw it out on the compost pile, but we here in the city, we don't, and so I'm just gonna dump it in the trash. Here we go. Which now gives me the opportunity to just pour the rest into here. again, we're gonna let it drain. But since we're like several inches into liquid, what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna let it drain back into the pot, and we'll get back when in about an hour or so when it's all drained, and we'll take it from there. Okay, so it's about half an hour later and all the juice has drained out, which means now that we're gonna dump what's in the colander. Pour the liquid that has drained into the bowl with the other one. And then strain, because the colander has relatively big holes, strain whatever we got one more time through a fine sieve. I guess we'll need to get the additional tool. So this is the additional stuff we got now, and we're just going to dump this. Okay, so this is it. Here's our stock we made. I just pour it into containers, and then if I need it immediately, it makes a delicious egg drop soup. If I use it immediately, then I'll put it in the fridge, but otherwise I put it in the freezer. So all the best to you guys, and good luck with making your own bone broth.